All right, so this video is going to be geared mostly towards beginner lifters. I do want to give a little bit of advice before I dive a little bit deeper into the more intermediate and advanced videos I'm about to release over the next couple weeks. So yeah, to get right into it, beginner training programs and alternate view. So I encourage you to trust the process with your lifting so long as you understand the basics. I do recommend learning both beginner and advanced lifting methods so that way you can understand why you're doing what you're doing, or so you can assess where you stand and when you need to change your program. One of my next videos will be covering my 4 fundamentals of hypertrophy training. So with that being said, before I get too deep into this video, my first piece of advice is that nearly every program will work. Just because one thing is right doesn't mean the other is wrong. So when you hear my viewpoints, just because I might be right, the other viewpoints aren't necessarily wrong, and that's vice versa. That goes the other way around. You don't have to do full body 3 times a week as a beginner. And this is going to be pretty much the theme of the video here on the common training programs that are recommended to beginners and why I don't necessarily advise against them, but why there actually are potentially better alternatives for some lifters. Please note this isn't for everybody, but there are certain lifters this does apply to, and I'll get into that a little bit here. Like I said, I do advise against it for some lifters, but this is where your own responsibility and thinking comes into play. You can never rely on someone like me or someone else online to assess what's best for you because we don't know where you're at. This video is not addressed towards one specific person. So you need to assess what's best for you. And if you like what I say here and you think it applies to maybe yourself, then feel free to take it. I think it's great advice. If you don't think this would work for you, then maybe don't take my advice. Either way, I think it's still good to hear both viewpoints. So let's see what I got here. Let's start off with the pros of the full body 3 times a week training. So this video is really going to be diving into the pros and cons of the full body 3 times a week training, as well as the alternatives that I would recommend. I don't just want to discourage this style of training, because I think something that I'm learning as I make more videos is if I don't actively mention that I'm not necessarily against something, it's very, very easy for people to take it the wrong way. And I know that because I've been there and I see this happen with other people too, where you see one method that works really well that you really like, and you instinctively just make the other method the enemy. I want to make sure you don't have that mindset because, like I said, just because one thing's right doesn't mean the other's wrong. But I've said that 1,000 times, so let's get into it. First pro of the full body 3 times a week is going to be the high frequency for each muscle group. This is good because beginners need to learn the skill of lifting. Another pro with the full body 3 times a week is you actually can pretty greatly increase your work capacity over time. Since it's a full body workout, you're doing a lot of exercises, you're going to be in the gym for a while. So it will increase your work capacity per session. So to get into the cons here, the first con that I have is that this style of training is suboptimal for distribution of effort throughout that training session. Let's say you start with your legs, then you move to your chest, back, shoulders, arms, core. There's all sorts of, I hate the word core, but you know what I mean. I'm talking about abs. There's a lot of effort that you spend throughout the workout, and obviously as you go further in, you have less effort to execute those exercises towards the end. The next con I have here is that it is suboptimal training session frequency for habit building. Keep in mind it's not the muscle frequency, because you're still going to be training, or you still can train other muscles. You can train all your muscles 3 times a week, not just doing full body. You can split it up a little bit. What I'm trying to say is beginners, you have to learn the habit of going to the gym. If you're someone that's never been to the gym before and you're only going 3 times a week, I find that it's much more difficult to stay disciplined, because if you need to make 3 workouts happen per week, let's say you start off wrong on a Monday, or you sleep in, or you have to work late, or school, or whatever happens, you have the room for error to push this off. And while it can be logically correct that it works and you have room for error, and that's why 3 times a week is nice, At the same time, you're not building the discipline to make your workouts happen and adjust the other variables of your life to make the workouts happen. So if you have to work out every day, if you miss the workout, you missed it. And if you do the workout, that's building a habit. Let's say you go 6 times out of 7, and you're training every day, that's going to build a habit really well. That's just an example. I do not advise 7 days a week training, but I think you get the point I'm trying to make here. So, next con I have for this style of training is that a lot of muscles are neglected or effort is inconsistent due to day-to-day lift order. So, like I was saying earlier, this is kind of an alternative point. If you start with your legs, go to your chest, go to your back, then arms, then shoulders and whatnot, if you do that every time, the muscles that are last every day on that 3-day split are going to be trained with the least intensity because you're lowest in effort. However, if you do try and overcome this by changing up that list or reversing it for certain workouts, now you're getting a very inconsistent effort on your day-to-day or week-to-week training program. Let's say you start off with a barbell squat on Monday. You're fresh, you're ready to go, you just had the weekend off. Let's say your next workout on Wednesday, you reverse the order, now your squats are last. But everything else is tired because you've already worked it. You have a little bit more fatigue because this is your second workout, and it's going to be much tougher to track progress. And I'm not saying that this is the end of the world because it's really not, but it's definitely something that's overlooked, and I've never really seen anybody argue kind of what I'm saying here. Last true con that I have for this style of training is that these workouts are long and strenuous to a beginner. Like I said, it's full body. You're going to be in the gym for a long time. It's just how it is. There's really no way around it. So to move on to what I advise, I do advise splitting this volume up. And the reason I say this is because there are certain benefits from this that you'll get. The higher training session frequency builds your habit really well, and your sessions will be half the time. And when I say this, I'm not talking about splitting it into a bro split. I'm talking about keeping that 2 times, 3 times a week frequency for each muscle group. And you can do this a couple different ways. Upper lower is a good one. There's basically what I did when I started, and it was a push day, so chest, shoulders, triceps, and then my pull day would be legs, back, and biceps. You don't require a whole ton of volume as a beginner, so these days really don't take very long. Essentially, it's half as long as those full body workouts would be. You're basically just taking the second half of it and moving it to that next day. So you can do this and be in the gym 4 times a week, which is okay. I would recommend 5 or 6, as crazy as that sounds for a beginner, because you're not basically you're not straining yourself as much as you would during a full body. So you're going in, you're putting in a good little bit of effort to get some results and learn the skill of lifting while building a habit at the same time. You can't overdo the volume with this. You have to know what you're doing, and that's why I'm going to go over my fundamentals of bodybuilding training in one of these next videos over the next week or so here. Okay, so here are the most important things to learn as a beginner. The first one, like I just mentioned a minute ago, is going to be the skill of lifting. And that's right, lifting is a skill. It is something that takes coordination and it takes strength, just like any other sport or activity. The more you practice it, the better you get to a certain degree. Obviously, there's overtraining, obviously there's undertraining, but generally, the more frequently you can do it in a strategic manner, the better you are going to become at that skill. So you're still learning your own coordination and strength, and this is why bro splits are generally, not always, they're generally less optimal for beginners. I personally would not recommend a bro split for a beginner, but that doesn't mean there's not beginners that can make a ton of gains off of it. If you're a coordinated and naturally strong person and you're a beginner, you could probably make some pretty good gains off of it. Is it 100% optimal? Probably not, but it's not like it's not going to work. At the end of the day, it's all about total weekly volume. I'll have a video on that as well. I've got a lot of ideas here. So the more often you can practice something, the quicker you'll learn it. So higher frequency is better in general for beginners. Another kind of mocked skill of bodybuilding that I see all the time, and it really is sad to see this, is mind-muscle connection. And if you've spent any time online, this training method or training technique, it really gets mocked. And I kind of get it. Like at first glance, yeah, I mean, the more you squeeze a muscle when it's contracted or whatever you define mind muscle connection as, might not necessarily get you much bigger. I would argue it probably does make a little bit of a difference. Overall, having mind muscle connection with 5-pound dumbbells on curls is not nearly as optimal as kind of feeling your biceps on a 25-pound curl. I think that's just common sense. However, what mind muscle connection does do is it's an indirect indicator of good form and technique. It's not always that, but if you have a very hard time feeling your lats when you're doing a lat pull down, your form might be off. And the more you can recognize your lats and understand where they are and when they're working, that's how you know if your technique and your form is actually good. So it's not the end all be all, but it is a very, very good indirect indicator of good form and technique that will basically give you long-term progression because you'll be training properly sooner, if that makes sense. So don't overlook it. Just because other people make fun of it or laugh at it doesn't mean it's not an actual good method. I highly, highly, highly recommend practicing this in your training. So one of the last ones that I have here, actually this is the last one, is, guys, it comes down to finding what you actually like to do. And I'm sure you've heard this quote, but I do want to say it anyways, is that great effort on a good program is far better than good effort on a great program. So this is a big problem that I see online, is people overthinking all these tiny little things. And if you're trying to optimize absolutely everything, you're probably missing the point of actually training really hard and giving it that great effort in the first place. So you can get your average, slightly above average, like good program that works for some people, maybe doesn't work for others. If you put a great effort into a program like that, you will make progress. That's what it all comes down to. To finish off this video, the reason why I say all this advice is because this is all stuff that worked for me. So I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't speak about what I actually did. I got great results and I've been successful ever since. Guys, when I first started training, I saw the full body 3 times a week recommendations, and even as a beginner that really didn't know much at all about lifting, I was like, that doesn't make logical sense. Not that it's not something that would work. I mean, obviously, I've already gone past my beginner stage of lifting, and I didn't do full body 3 times a week, so I can't say if it would or wouldn't have worked. But I do know I got incredible results off of doing this high frequency, lower volume training when I was a beginner, basically dividing up those full body days. That way I'm still getting the frequency. That way I'm still getting the habit building at that same time. And every beginner that I run into has a problem with motivation, discipline, and consistency. It's not necessarily the training itself. So with that being said, if you can build the habit and stay in the gym long term, that's what we're chasing after. Maybe it's not the absolute best thing to be in the gym 6 times a week, but I'm not advising you to go crazy high on volume. We need to do slightly lower volume, and we need to build that habit. This is what this program and my advice here is about. With that being said, that's all I've got for today. There's a lot of small topics in here that I do want to branch out on for further videos, and I definitely will be. So yeah, I guess the more videos you watch, the more you'll understand my way of thinking and some of my advice here. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. So thanks for watching.